paste it in. But I thought it meant you could automatically upload it, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll make notes. It's just be easier. I'll figure it out next. Right, does the clicker work and things like that? Can you go back to the slide so I can? You've got it, and then back to the slides. So. I
needed to shut you up.
This is not clicking. You'll need to have focus on the slides for me to click. Or just next slide.
That's where the slides are. That's the point.
So on your, if you go onto that screen and close that one, can I then? Does that then work? Yeah, right. Okay, so welcome all to the Green Working Group. So hopefully you're in the right place. First of all, this is obviously a newly created working group, which is great. We've both the Green chairs and AD would like to thank you all for getting so many drafts in such a short period of time. That's great. In addition to it being a new working group and Green, both of the chairs are also new to chairing. So we're Green chairs as well. So so please bear with us this one. There's been a few technical issues that have come up. So that's also added to our excitement to getting ready to go. So we've got a packed agenda this morning. We'll try and go through these chair slides fairly quickly. Please ask all the presenters to try and keep to your time slots. We'll run a timer, and please try and make sure you leave some time for questions to come in, because sometimes that's the most interesting part of these meetings. The note well. So I'd like to give you a chance all to read this, especially it's the first meeting of the week. It's really important for the people who are new to IETF to understand that the note well applies to everything you say in this meeting, and also any sort of contributions or written contributions you make to the chat, and that you're bound by the policies there. So you want to be aware of what that is and what that means to you. You want to be aware of the IPR policies that apply. So I'll give you a quick chance to look through this and have a read through it. But if you're new to IETF and you're not familiar, you may also want to have a look at those in more detail and understand what your obligations are. But otherwise, please feel free to contribute. That'll be encouraged here. Okay, I'm going to hopefully skip through to the next one. Yeah. Oh, we've gone back. Oh, no. Sorry, it's my fault. I can't go to the middle of the slide. I've got it, fine. So note really well. The other thing that's very important to understand in the IETF is that actually we all work together as a community, and we're all collectively working towards a single common goal, which is trying to make the internet better and advance internet technologies. It is important within that we all treat each other with respect and courtesy, and listen to other people's views and take those on board, and try to sort of not curb passions. Passions is good, but try and make sure that the interactions we have are polite and cordial, and we treat everyone like nice fellow human beings. If there's any issues and things, there are various sort of people you can talk to. You can come talk to the chairs. You can talk to the ombuds team if there's any sort of issues like that. But please speak to us first. Probably we may be able to help massage things as we go through. The agenda today, as I said, is packed agenda. What we're trying to do in terms of how we've grouped this is to split it up into different slots. So we've got a slot talking about requirements, we've got a slot talking about terminology, we've got a slot talking about metrics, and finally about models. And we've given time for the individual presentations within those slots, and we've given a little bit of time to sort of discuss after some of those slots in terms of trying to work out what the next steps are, because we need to get to the point where we get working group adopted documents, and we need to get some effective sort of consensus within the working group of how we move forward on each of these things. Just noticing that Joe's walking into the room. Thank you, Joe. One thing that would be useful today is making notes. That helps us effectively, and it's also the written record of what the working group has agreed on, and consensus is helpful. It's particularly helpful though for those people who are presenting to understand what the questions are and what comments are. I would invite everyone to help make notes. I think we'll put into the chat the link to the note-taking tool. Joe has kindly offered to help
Doesn't-
drive the notes, but if everyone else can contribute, particularly if you make comments or ask questions, it'd be good for you to go back and check that what you've said has been captured correctly. That'd be really helpful if you can do that. So that's our agenda today. It's fairly packed and we will sort of get through it as soon as we can. A couple of other reflections. So at this point, I think I might invite Mahesh to come up and just talk briefly about what he sees, the focuses of the Green Working Group and priorities.
Thank you, Rob. And working through all the logistics. I wanted to thank the proponents, many of who are now contributors into the working group with the charter discussion and the formation of the charter and the formation of the working group itself. So thank you. As we kick off the effort within this working group, I wanted to just share some thoughts on what I see as some of the goals for the working group. First is, of course, the requirements document. The requirements document, in my mind, should be a living document, documenting the requirements of the working group and specifically the use cases within it. So expectation is that that document will evolve as the work group evolves with its charter. And in my mind, hopefully it never becomes an RFC, but I'll let the work group decide if they want to do that. On the topic of requirements, ideally, we should be looking at use cases first before determining requirements. Trying to state the requirements before we have actually gone through the use cases, to me, is like putting the cart before the horse. So in today's meeting and the following meetings, I hope we can evaluate each of the use cases and validate them for today's environment and whether we want to address them in this working group. I see a number of very good proposals and drafts that have been submitted to the working group. Even if the current charter may not support some of them, remember that the charter itself is not cast in stone. So the expectation is that once we have gone through the initial set of documents that are within the charter of the working group, that we will, in all likelihood, update the charter. And that includes the drafts on sustainability. It is an important topic, I realize it, and sustainability, but it's not in the current scope of the charter of the working group. Sustainability is now part of a research group within IRTG called Sustain, and there is a draft charter discussion of that research group happening as we speak. So I would welcome people who are interested in that topic to go forth and have your voices heard in that research group. And that is it. And the chairs will, at this point, I guess, shed more light on what is the charter or what is in scope of the working group. Over to them.
Thank you, Mahesh. So, yes, to carry on to that, I think it's great to sort of make sure that the working group is focused on what's in the charter. So during the charter discussions, it became quite clear that what we're focusing on is like an energy efficiency more than wider sustainability at this time. So we're going to structure the work into these requirements, foundations, which includes terminology and metrics, and then modeling proposals that are covering both getting statistics, energy statistics off devices, and also being able to have some level of control over those devices. I think one of the things we would like to focus on is trying to get a simple starting model, a base model that can be extended rather than trying to make a huge model that covers too many things. So we want to start small and build up. There's also, we got some alignment with other activities and things going on within the IETF. There's other working groups that we will defer work to, but also beyond that, there's other organizations that we want to make liaisons to. If anyone is interested in helping write those liaisons or draft the text of those, please reach out to the chairs, because any help would be appreciated as well. But otherwise, we would like to try and start some of these out, hopefully before the next meeting. I've lost.
Again? So
just onto the next slide. And then so after this meeting, effectively, we'll see where things progress today, but we want to work towards adopting documents in these particular areas as per the charter. And so hopefully we'll get some indication on each of these categories, and the possibilities are we select a particular draft as a starting point, or the authors together collectively work towards agreement towards a document that the working group can adopt. We may consider also a design team if that's appropriate in particular areas, or more likely maybe one or more interims. We'll plan to schedule those between IETF 121 and 122. Making progress on the list would be helpful, and if needs be, you can always email the chair's alias or find Diego or I this week as well. And I think that's, I'm still on track time-wise. So, on to the first presenter.
Okay, and nobody coming to the queue, so I guess that's now I have to find how to get out of here and present the next one. That is Luis, and that's how time to time. When can I share the slides?
Oh, you just do it on the. Just...
Ah, yes, here, yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the other side. Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. This is Luis from Telefónica. I will present this draft about the requirements and use cases, or use cases and requirements, on behalf of my co-authors, Emile, Marisol, Benoit, and Chin. So the motivation of the draft was basically cover part of the charter items, so the definition of use cases for managing energy efficient networks. Also to work on from those use cases to collect and identify requirements that could allow an efficient management of energy efficient networks. And here, echoing the words from Mahesh, yeah, the idea is we are departing from, or we somehow are acknowledging the requirements that were already identified in previous work during the BOF and also the work in EMAN. But this is just a kind of collection of requirements. For sure, we need to go through the use cases and somehow, identify what could be the ones applicable to the green working group. And that would be based on the use cases that we identified in green. But somehow we are acknowledging the requirements identified in the past so far. And also we propose a framework that was as well discussed during the BOF. Yeah, basically these are the goals of the draft. So regarding use cases, well, we have identified in version 0.0 one generic use case that would be the one of about proportionality. So somehow that we can module the consumption of the network according to the traffic that is being observed. That is a generic use case. For the new version, we are considering additional use cases. Somehow in the draft, you will see, well, by the way, the draft is very draft. I mean, it's a real work in progress. So yeah, we need to consolidate it. This is clear. By now, the approach that we are taking for the use cases is somehow landing them, the definition of use cases in the open issues section. And then the idea will be to work on them to identify what could be the relevant use cases that identify new requirements. So this is more or less the approach that we are following. So for the version 0.1, we have included already in the use case section one about the incremental application of the green framework. We will show the framework later on. And we are considering in that landing section 3 additional use cases. One is about the multi-domain obtention of metrics, and for that we are we are looking at the case of a particular case of network slicing. The reason for that is that in 3EPP there is already some specification about the KPIs for energy efficiency in one of the specifications of 3EPP, and also here in IETF we are defining the framework for network slicing. So somehow we have a clear case of multi-domain where maybe we can do some effort here from IETF. The third use case would be the dynamic adjustment of network element throughputs according to the traffic levels, and in particular for the wireless transport network. The reason for that is in CCAMP, there is some work as well for modeling microwave links, microwave network elements, basically. So we have the possibility of automate in an automated manner of controlling the power of the radio links. So that could be also an interesting case that is leveraging on outcomes from IETF. And also the fifth case, we are considering the video streaming use case, or having a more efficient delivery of video traffic, which is the major part of the traffic that is now being carried by operator networks. As work in progress, so somehow there's also some work in an additional use case based on some inputs from NGMN, and would be about virtual network elements. We are sure that there will be some other use cases, and the idea said is somehow identify the use case, process the use case, check if there are unique requirements that could come from that use case, and then consider them for the document. For those other use cases that probably do not provide unique requirements, probably we can think on maybe documenting them in the wiki or something like that. We have some proposals at the end of this presentation. So regarding requirements, we will not cover here the requirements collected in the document. Please check the document for that. Only to mention that somehow the requirements listed there are coming from the above and previous documents, that all the discussions that we have. So we have we presented during the above the operator requirements, but also there were additional drafts already presenting some requirements, and for sure all those requirements coming from the EMAN working group. The next steps are the harmonization of the requirements and basically the association of use cases and requirements. So as Mahesh mentioned, so the first step is to identify the use cases, from those use cases to derive the requirements. That would be the process to follow. But by now we are acknowledging all those requirements that were identified in the past. Regarding the framework, as said, there was some discussion during the BOF. This framework was presented that consists in different levels: the device component level, the controller that would be the piece where we expect to have the energy efficiency management functions and those capabilities, and also the network domain level, where basically we will have some information that could be useful as well for performing that efficient management from the perspective of energy consumption. So this is included as well in the document. So as next steps, we acknowledge that the document now in version 0.0 is being very, very draft status. So we need to consolidate it, basically make it more readable, that's clear. Also that we have some content that probably could go to other documents, for instance, the terminology and so, but by now we include it because it somehow allow us to get the flow of the document, but probably all those parts should be out. We would like to incentivize the discussion on the draft, on the content of the draft. So for that, we have the GitHub. The idea would be for the people interested on that to raise issues and put requests, and using the mailing list for getting the consensus, the discussions, and so on, and also from our side to periodically socialize the changes in the document. You have the link of the GitHub in the slide, and so you can go directly to there. And also as next step, we were proposing maybe to have an interim meeting so that we could advance on the identification of those use cases, and again, from these use cases, the requirements. And as I said, maybe some of the topics could go to the wiki if there are no justification to keep them on the document, or just for avoiding a very large document. And there could be some of the topics identified here so far. So the energy per customer, the component on frequency, capacity, these kind of things. So it's a matter of discussion. And with that, I'm done, I think. Yeah, no more.
Please.
So Carlos Bernardos, UC3M. So thanks for the work. I think this document is really needed, but I have some comments. I would like to fully echo what the AD said. I think we should focus on the use cases before. The document has a lot of useful content, but it's hard to, well, not hard, but it's not that easy to follow, because I think we should have first the work focus on the use cases that drive the requirements.
Yeah.
So fully agree also on not consider those that are partially related or that don't have specific requirements for the green working group. And then I think at that time will be the time to work on the framework. So I think we should, my opinion is that we should focus only on the use cases at this point, then drive the requirements, and then go to the framework. And maybe the interim focusing on the use cases will be a good idea to avoid the endless discussion that typically we end up in IETF on use cases, and not closing that document before we do the actual work. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlos.
Let me say that taking into account the time that we have Ali in the and then we have to close the. Sorry, Philip.
Thanks, Ali Rezaki. Thanks for the focus on the use cases. I just wanted to ask about how you define a use case. I think with the purpose that we shouldn't take the technology in the center and then build around it a use case. Rather, we should look for the use cases and then derive towards technology. I think we go a bit in the other direction sometimes.
Yeah, but for the purpose of the releasing the version soon, and so somehow we have been opportunistic. So
Yep.
probably taking the two approaches at the same time, probably we need to rationalize the approach.
Yep.
But yeah, I understand the comment, and yeah.
Thanks.
I did try to log. I cannot log into the IETF data track. So
This morning I had the similar issue. Yes, that's true.
you know, expecting somebody to add themselves to a virtual
Yes, that's the interesting scaling stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can put the comments into the chat. Is that possible? You're not? Are you on the connected to the client?
because I can't reach that either.
Drop us an email.
Yeah, I was just going to point out that load shedding is going to be more more important than efficiency going.
Okay, I think we need to move on to the next slide. Next presentation. Thank you.
Luis, who's going to present the terminology? Oh, right. Okay. No, I was not sure who of you. So that's.
I understand your preferred is Luis, but anyway. Yeah, so I'll be presenting, I would say, the draft about the terminology. We just started with Luis, Sheen, and the others. Next slide, please.
You can. You want me to?
Yes, I have the.
But anyway, that's
Okay. Yeah, so this is just a reminder for myself because sometimes I forgot what we have in the charter. So just to keep it focused, we need to agree among us about, I would say, a set of terms and a set of metrics that will ease for us the discussion when we will come up to the solution space. So keeping that in mind, when we drafted this document, we kept these 3 items that we wanted to focus on. So have a very small set of terms that will be really useful for us and useful for in terms of the I would say the solution space, and also to understand each other's when we will be talking about the energy efficiency and the field part of it. The intent is not to have something which is really comprehensive. That's not our goal. We don't want to list every term which is related to energy. That's not the term. The objective also. It's not also our objective to define new terms just to define them. So if there's a usable term that we can just steal from existing documents, we will do that. The documents that were produced by EMAN working group are really useful, and we will grab a lot of terms from there. And in addition to that, we need also the definition of the matrix, because there are various ways to compute, I would say, the energy efficiency. If you go to the 3GPP, they have their own models, BBF, they have their own models, and so on. So we need to have a common ground to understand what the others are doing before we start defining something in our own. The last part is the inventory of the SDOs are doing on this area. For the last part, the purpose is just to give the context for the people to understand what is doing here in the field. The purpose is not to maintain it there. One day we will just remove it once we decide that it's not useful for us at all. So with that, we came to a very short list, and for me it's too long because some of those we can just remove them, but we need help from the working group to help us, I would say, make the selections. And also if there are, I would say, terms that really are useful, but we don't capture in the current version of the draft, this is really welcome for you to receive this kind of, I would say, input from your side. I want to go to give you the definition we put behind of it, because this is not the purpose. The purpose is just to give you the spirit and the rationale if allowed we build the document. So that's it. Really, we try to stick to the charter, very focused, not a comprehensive list of terms. We need some metrics to understand what the others are doing, to build so that we can leverage on it. And we hope that this can be used as a starting point for this item of the work.
Any questions?
Everything is.
So you have six extremely
Well,
Very
so
much
but
appreciated.
just before you disappear, Med, before you disappear. So I'm looking at the sort of in terms of the terms and requirements. Again, I think we want to try and keep the set very narrow. So I think that's good. I think reusing ones we already know and have, I think that obviously makes lots of sense. Obviously, we've got a couple of presentations on the sort of terms and things, trying to consolidate those down into one document. I think we want to do so. Again, after the next presentation, we'll have some bit more discussion, hopefully, in terms of trying to work out how we get towards one document and towards adoption.
Lex plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. Good morning.
Just to move the.
Thank you. Good morning. This is the second terminology draft we co-authored with my colleagues, Carlos and Hesham. I present on behalf of all of us. We want to first acknowledge that this draft has been authored prior to the Green Working Group being chartered, and it was discussed in the e-impact program as part of a larger draft that also included sustainability considerations. And then we thought it would be a good idea to separate terminology from the rest. And now we'd like to present this to you so that we can see if it helps advance the Green Charter or it can be leveraged otherwise. So, as I said, it's on sustainability-related terms and concepts, and basically the target is to support the evaluation of internet technologies with respect to their impact from an environmental sustainability perspective, and it is trying to create a common understanding for us all as vendors, operators, designers, academics, and architects. It starts with defining what sustainability is, and for that, this rather classic definition is used, and it's coming from some decades ago when this field was started with the UN Commission on Environment and Development. And it defines sustainability as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So it's rather long-term, future-oriented when we talk about sustainability. And it has a systems perspective in it, in that you need to consider not only environmental, but also social and economic factors. Now, having said that, I personally think this is rather a human-centric definition, and within the decades that followed, we came to realize that we are not alone in this planet, so it's not enough to meet the needs of future human generations. We have to meet the needs of the planet as a whole. So in that, this definition is also, I would say, it has to evolve. Now, as the previous terminology draft was trying to focus on certain topics that needed to be, let's say, relevant to what's going to be used in this working group, our perspective was a bit wider, that we wanted to include what might be relevant for the whole of IETF and IRTF. So the current document contains some 30 plus definitions, as you will see, and we were even thinking of expanding it further. Now, these are the ones that are currently in there. It's doesn't want to move.
No.
Yep, thank you. And
This one, right?
yeah, so on this slide, you will see the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it is the, let's say, lighthouse for everyone working on sustainability outcomes. Lots of technology enabler development is being done, of course, in IETF, as well as other standards organizations and research centers, universities, and vendors. But I guess the top starting position for what we want to, let's say, impact are these UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. So they are in there as well. As an example of the systems perspective we took in this draft, I want to share with you this, one of the terms we defined in the draft, which is the donut economics. It might sound a bit weird or strange, but it's not something we are unfamiliar with actually as engineers. It's talking about trade-offs or compromises or balances. Basically, it is pitching the requirements of society and economy to produce, to consume, to service against the ecological limits of our planet, that we are impacting the climate, the biosphere, of course, the oceans and the materials, and they are compressing, if you will, towards the center, whereas the human activity is pushing out. And there is that green space called the safe and just space for humanity. And we want to remain in there. Now, if this sounds a bit, let's say, too far away from what you're doing, think of it as bringing in further environmental constraints. Now we are talking about energy consumption limits and requirements you can think of as pushing centerwards, and your requirements about performance and latency or whatever bandwidth pushing out, because we require more and more resources to achieve our needs. And we are looking for the trade-off, the safe space for ourselves, the limits. That's the kind of systems thinking we wanted to have in this draft. And then there are the concepts. We wanted to select a few concepts that are mainstream currently in sustainability, and anything you say today about sustainability and something, you are, let's say, automatically asked which direction you're going. Are you talking about sustainable X, or are you talking about X for sustainability? So Internet for sustainability is talking about what the internet can impact in other sectors to help their own sustainability. And when we say sustainable interworking, we are talking about our own footprint that we want to manage well to reduce our overall impact. We give some examples from smart grid, smart cities, and smart agriculture. Now, the last concept we introduced was the key values and key value indicators, which are basically another term to include social and economic, let's say, perspectives and outcomes into our technology design process. We talked about use cases. We start typically from a technology, we build a use case around it, and we want to typically show how good it's going to be for everyone and everywhere and every time. Now, rather, we want to say, look, here are the challenges from UN SDGs and other, let's say, planetary observations, and we want to say, if you want to impact these positively, here is how we should design our technology, creating those feedback loops. That's all this key value business is about. Please. Thank you. So as I said, the scope of this draft is rather broad, and we are open to discussing how it can help the Green Working Group Charter and how to take it further based on that discussion. Thank you so much. Questions, comments, welcome.
Any questions? I'm for the room. So, my notes at the same time. So I did get a chance to look at some of these documents earlier. I think for this document, it felt that the scope of it was much broader than what's in scope for this document. So for this working group. So I definitely think there's probably content that's useful to feed into sort of terminology. Things that I think that's useful. But I think we need to think carefully about like the wider sustainability and where the best place is for that to be.
Right.
That might be the sustain research group that's in the process of being formed. I don't know how long that will take. We don't know for sure. That'll definitely get created.
Yep.
But that might be a place. Keeping something on impact might be another option. But I think that as this is at the moment, I would probably regard this as being too broad to adopt as a working group. I'd like to narrow down, ideally, the terminology and the metrics and the models to exactly what we need to sort of solve. Does that make sense?
Sure, absolutely. We can look if there are any terms you can, let's say, pick and choose from this, but I fully agree that the scope is broader. I'm working on the Sustain RG charter, so we can make use of it maybe there as well.
That makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the end of the two sort of slots and terminology we had, and I had 5 minutes in the agenda for people to comment on sort of where they see as the best way of moving forward, if anyone's got some thoughts on that. So basically, the working group would like to get towards adopting a document on terminology. I don't think we need more than one. So if people have got any comments on whether they've read both of these documents, if they see one of these as a good starting point, if they think that we need to hold a virtual interim for this, are there any opinions on ways forward here from the working group?
Carlos Bernardo, just to say again, I think an interim will be useful, and I think it's very important to synchronize the terminology with the use cases, because the way you describe a use case to be homogeneous, I think it's very important to keep that in mind. So I don't know exactly how to do that, but I think we should keep that in mind.
In general, well, we have tried to identify what should be the foundations of what they're doing, and we understand that on the one hand, use cases, terminology, and when talking about metrics, because metrics are very much connected with terminology as well, synchronizing or aligning all these foundations is essential. That's something that is somehow in our minds, and it's good that you remark it.
Show of hands to see how many people read the terminology drafts.
Or at least,
Okay.
or you can ask. No, go for it.
Well, maybe we keep the time for extra discussions, but so I think there'll be a discussion on the list effectively to discuss and see if we can try and focus on one particular terminology draft as a starting place. And maybe we discuss whether we try and hold a virtual interim to try and focus on this, or
yeah, well, we can organize a show of hands or make it physically. That's we don't need to use the tool. That's well, the only thing is that
you need to
the
keep
remote
the
ones.
yeah.
But taking into account the problems with the data tracker, I don't know what would be more. So shall we
do it in the room?
Do it in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, I mean, we have seen two terminology drafts. I guess that from the discussion it's clear, or should be clear, at least for me it's clear, that there is a clear candidate to be the basic terminology draft. But just to confirm it, if you can show your hands whether you think the first terminology draft has been presented this year, right? Yeah, but the problem is that people has problems I mean, I don't know if still there are problems with the data tracker. It's simply that. It's not working. Nope.
Yes, I hope.
Okay, so yes, raise your hands, at least those of you here whether if you think that the first one is a
I can't get to the micro procedurally. We need to include the remote participants, so we got to use the Medeco tool. We're gonna pull
Okay.
the pages to what's in the remote.
Well, how can we use the Medeco tool when we can't get to Medeco?
Well, we can make it and just count your hands here. That's simply is the
What's the question? So,
which whether the who believes the first draft is the right the right starting point for terminology.
yeah.
Yeah, but again, that we're going to ask the remote to ham as well. would be interesting, indeed.
Pascal Hubert, maybe you can share the Mythico link, which does not depend on data tracker.
Doesn't depend, but if you cannot identify yourself, you cannot vote or whatever.
Well,
Yeah.
if you already have the data tracker saved, it worked. I mean, my neighbor tried it, it worked for him. You can try. Try for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How can you?
So Rich Sauls, the data tracker is having problems. If you've already cached a login to Medeco, then it will work. But if this is like your first time in a few days, because say you were traveling to get here, you're not going to be able to get into the Medeco site. You have the escape hatch, which is to be confirmed on the mailing list. So you're going to have to end up doing that anyway. So
Yeah,
asking for the sense in the room and then confirm on the mailing list, that's fine.
So what I plan to do is I've put the poll up now so it's running on Meeteco. So we'll do the show of hands there so people can do that, and we'll get a read for that, and we'll also do it within the room as well to get a show of hands to effectively get a feel for the room, and then we'll confirm on the list. So the question we're asking is who believes the first draft, which is draft BCLP green terminology, is the right starting point, and this is effectively the starting point as a working group document for doing terminology. Right, so I think in terms of, it's still going up. So at the moment, I read this as 35 yes and 22 no opinion. So I think that may mean that we still need to have more discussion on this. I think it's still quite a strong indication that this is a good starting point. Not many people here think this isn't a good starting point. Can we just do a show of hands in the room for the same question? So who here believes that the first draft is the right starting point for this? Okay, so it's mixed. Okay, thank you. So I don't know if you.
For the second.
The other two questions?
Well, I'm not sure we need to ask. I can ask the second one. I think there's quite strong indication that that's a good starting point.
Yeah, from the tool, we have only four people that are not happy with it. Well, there is no opinion. I guess that is has to do with the fact that, well, probably they have not time to read the document. So I think that we can conclude or we in the notes that this is something that is going to be, that is a general feeling that the first draft is suitable for being a good starting point. Is if not the well, there is a majority of opinions in favor.
So now we're asking for the second draft. Who thinks that that is a good starting point? And I'll ask the same question for the show, for like a show of hands in the room. So who believes the second draft is a good starting point for this work? Okay, thank you. So, I mean, my read for this, which will confirm from the list, is it feels like the working group's leaning towards that first draft being a good starting point. And I think it means we need to take sort of some input in from that second draft. But I think that that is the direction I think I see reading this room. Okay. On to the next section.
I think. Dan, is you the one who's going to present the?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I just want to say that Croatia has a better shirt than Spain. Spanish shirts are, like boring, although they are much better team.
You think about you have an incomplete version of this. With
yes, it's always good to start, with a little bit of humor. Makes everything more relaxed. Hi, I'm Dejan Bogdanovic. I'm going to present the energy metrics for network operation draft on behalf of Tony Lee and myself. I started to look into energy efficiency distribution in some areas locally in Boston, and was learning about the energy problems. And as we were, as a community, trying to look how we can make our energy efficiency more impacting our design decisions, I thought this might be a good area to put in some energy, because we all know about the rising energy cost as well as the environmental concerns. It's not unusual for a big tier 1 network operator or a big data center operator to pay in the order of billions of dollars for energy costs per year. And if they can make the energy efficiency, if they can improve the energy efficiency, they can save hundreds of millions of dollars. We did some calculations based on the data that we have that I cannot share, but it is a significant amount of money and energy that can be saved by fixing few things around. But in order to know that, we have to be able to measure where and why we should be doing that. So we have to be able to standardize and say we are comparing apples to apples, and not that each one of us, each vendor chooses which conditions are best for them, and then based on that, make a decision. This is what we will be following and marketing. This is the button to press to go forward.
Yeah.
Okay. So as objectives is define clear measurements, how to measure it, what is the formula to provide it, what is methodology used to measure under what conditions, and how to report. And with that information, use that information into our design decisions. Is it the design for the protocols for network management, or even design of the networks? The clicker is not working.
It's no.
No, I wanted it there, so it just went. Okay, so there are 4 metrics that I consider are the important one. One is the power consumption per data rate, and the idea there is that you have multiple elements in the network where element can be a link, it can be a single interface within a network element, and looking at how efficient is the data transmission over that interface or over that link. That is one energy metric to look at, because some of the links, or sorry, some of the interfaces can be using 1-2 watts of power, some can be using 16 watts of power. And by making the right design decision, we can decide, hey, we really don't need here a 16 watt interface. We can go with a 4 watt interface. And for that purpose, we have a right choice to do for the network design. But without having the metrics in order to do all the calculations, we will not where we can make those savings. The other one, the PUE, comes out of a data center world, and PUE is how energy efficient are the facilities that are housing the networking equipment. And there is more and more of itization of the networking, that we will be running into same facility energy efficiency issues as already the data centers have. So taking that into the account, for example, Verizon has 19,000 central offices across US, and they're housing not as much equipment as they used to do it before. And optimizing around that around those facilities could lead to significant energy savings. The next one is the network equipment energy efficiency. And this is when you're looking the network element as a whole, how well does it forward the traffic at different levels compared to using the energy. In some research, not all elements do, actually, I haven't seen elements that are doing linear power usage. As more traffic they push forward, that they will be linearly growing the energy usage. It's a weird graph that shows different, depending on the packet size, depending on how many features on the packet processing pipeline are being enabled, it uses different amount of energy. And this is one part that we should have some idea what network elements are behaving under what conditions and under what loads, how much energy they are using. And then the same thing, this goes into the energy proportionality coefficient, is that how many workloads it is executing, that if you increase the workload, will the energy increase linearly or logarithmically? Those are the things that we have to start looking into and trying to standardize, that we can compare, not just based on the vendor equipment, but we can also then look into at what point in the topology the element is executing certain workloads and how much energy will it be using. From some other work that we heard in the BOFs and within the IETF, and from the research area, we know that environmental factors are impacting the energy consumption. And trying to standardize testing conditions will be very helpful to find out these are, how the equipment is behaving. In the facilities, we are always trying to put in a certain standard conditions, but there are conditions on the towers that are different because they are much more environmentally exposed. And towers are one of the biggest energy users in a network. So trying to get the right reporting under what conditions that power load was being reported is an important in order to get to the right decision. We cannot eliminate all of the factors, but if we know the factors that are being reported, it will be, much more helpful in the comparison and making the decision. The measurement methodologies, it's another part that where we will have to do more work. How we want to do we want to do direct measurements or estimations? For example, there are various levels of power usage reporting that is available today within the network vendors and their equipment that they are providing. So there are some ways how you can do pretty good estimations today, but if we can say these are the measurements that we need from the equipment would be very helpful. For example, the PoE switches support power measurement on every single interface, where depending on what's plugged in, that will give you the power utilization. Where if you go to a regular switch that is not PoE enabled, you will have to do estimation of the measurement based on the SFP that has been plugged in. Just as, oh, okay. I think this is almost the end. And if we can decide on the methodologies, we can then improve the monitoring tools and sensors that can enhance, the standardization process for us to make the right decision. The reporting guidelines, again, are always important. Hey, this is the frequency, what we are doing. We know that from the SNMP world, if you are taking it every 15 minutes, stuff are getting normalized and you're losing some information in between that. So there's a choice between how often you want to measure for the results that you will be achieving. And as we've been trying to standardize on the data format, because we expect to receive tons of data, we should have also good data format that is easy to analyze and that is a common standard.
We're out of time, so if we
okay.
Questions quickly.
Yeah. Question, comments?
We have the first. Jingguang is remote or?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, your audio is not great though. We go have your question.
There are numerous metrics listed here. Has any consideration between given to converting these metrics into a uniform metric or several simple metrics for easy application?
So you're asking about how metrics can be aggregated?
Can you type in the question in the
Could you put the question in the chat?
And we can go with
Ali.
local here.
Yeah.
Whoever's next.
Is you on the
Thanks, Ali Rezaki. Have a question and a comment. Have you looked at what other standards organizations have already done in terms of metrics definitions, for example?
Yes, ETSI, I looked at the ETSI and the NIST, what they are doing, and I looked into that, yeah.
And it's all going in line with that, or
because more or less.
The reason I ask is because you mentioned the towers, and towers are really mainstream in the mobile networks. Mm-hmm. So that's why ETSI and now 3GPP is coming in with their own energy metrics as well.
Personal disclosure, the only thing what I want to hear from 3GPP is about the radio technologies, and I don't want to get them into the wireline networking side. And I think we should be communicating on these parts, mm-hmm. but I'm leaving them to define all the radio parts. Mm-hmm. And we have to view the energy efficiency radio where the radius from a whole network perspective, they can give us the input data, but we have to include it into our metrics that will fit the whole network. Because they are very saying they always want to define end-to-end solutions, which are not applicable for many other applications.
True. Thanks. Next is about net.
Can we move on because we're out of time? So
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. The frame that we're looking at here is power consumption and power efficiency. And that was a reasonable frame when we had dispatchable power generation, coal and gas. And, 2012, 76% of electricity in the UK came from dispatchable sources. Now it's 26%. Most of it's non-dispatchable. And when you use the power is actually more important than how much power you're using. And so I think that we're going to need to have, for some of the stuff like the communication links, you're not going to be able to do very much to turn it down. But being able to load
Actually, you can do traffic engineering. Based, and this is an additional in a variable that you have to take into the account when you're doing traffic engineering.
Yeah, I mean, the dispatchability is, I'm not sure how you can capture that, but that's probably going to be the most important metric.
The point there here, you start recording the data and you're getting you will start getting information based on which you can make some decisions. Right now, we don't have a common set of information that we can do comparison with many other things. It's a hodgepodge of many different things.
Jing asked that question on chat. Can you respond on chat?
Yeah, I'll respond on chat.
Thank you.
Okay. My take is Alex. Yes, you're connected, so go for it, please.
So, can you hear me?
Do you prefer to share your slides, Alex, or?
No, I think it's perfect actually. If you have it, and if you can just advance it.
Okay. Okay. Good. Go for it.
Okay. Well, yes. So hello everybody. Unfortunately, I cannot be in Dublin, so I'm remote. I'm presenting a draft, also green networking metrics, also on behalf of co-authors Carlos, Yves, Laurent, Ali, Greg, and Jeff. Next one, please. So basically, although this is a 0-0 draft, because this is now new busy in the green working group, this is actually not a new draft. Actually, versions of this have been around since July of 2022. And so I think you have actually seen also, you may have seen in the e-impact and so forth, earlier version and so forth of this. So, but basically green, previously basically it had been targeted at Ops AWG, but actually green, this green working group appears to be a much more natural landing spot, if you will, for this work, because while it affects operations, clearly the main interest and the main use case is, of course, green. So the purpose of this is, and is also was mentioned in previous presentations, is that basically visibility and instrumenting networks for the energy usage and for their carbon efficiency and so forth is basically an important building block for sustainable networking solutions and for more energy efficient solutions. So things basically start at that level that you need to basically know what the metrics are, what the parameters are that can help you actually in optimizing your outcomes, and that help you also actually assess how effective you are. So therefore, basically, so essentially, useful metrics are a starting point of that. This draft focuses just on the metrics and explains the potential use and some of the design considerations basically behind them. It does not describe how you would instrument them. It does not describe basically Yang data models. those are basically the realm of other drafts. And obviously, basically, since this work started, actually some young data models have started to appear in other drafts. So there's basically some complement here. Next one, please. So in terms of what's in the draft, there are, so this follows roughly basically the section which are in there. Basically, the metrics themselves we have structured along 4 different categories. The first set of metrics are basically related to the metrics that apply at the equipment and at the individual device level. So this is of course the main focus. I think is also the main focus of a lot of the data model work that we see here and so forth. So basically, the idea here is obviously you want to attribute the energy usage and the carbon footprint basically to the root. And as such, basically in the document, a number of energy consumption metrics defined. Basically, one thing, basically, first of all, what is the raw energy consumption, as well as also some normalized where you relate it to data rates and attributional attributional aspects. And of course, these metrics apply at different levels, from device to port levels and so forth. Then there are a couple of other metrics beyond pure energy consumption. So this includes sustainability factors to account, for instance, for power mix, or and likewise, there's also a section concerning virtualization considerations on virtual energy and virtual footprint, since a lot of solutions also rely on virtualization these days. So the question is basically, how do you attribute the energy which is incurred by the physical infrastructure to those virtual entities that you have there? Next one, please. So then beyond the device and equipment, basically the next level that the document is considering is flows. This basically, can you attribute the energy usage to flows and to service instance? This clearly is basically a function of the volume and duration of the service and so forth. Basically, this also goes into the realm of flow statistics, IPFix, and so forth. There are some additional considerations that have to be made or that can be distinguished depending on the metric, on packet replication, loss, and so forth. So it's not as easy as just counting the number of packets and relating the share, for instance, to this. One of the main purposes and uses of this is to enable carbon flow statistics, to enable also carbon-based accounting, and perhaps create incentives around the use of this. Then the next category concerns metrics at the path level. This basically serves to assess carbon and energy intensity of paths and alternative routes and so forth. And there's a whole discipline, for instance, of pollution-aware networking that these metrics facilitate. And there is also, I think there's another draft actually later in the session on the path energy traffic ratio and so forth. So this basically plays into that same space. So this basically would be an example of a path metric. And then finally, of course, you have the network at large. That is basically the holistic picture of what is being optimized. That is not just about the individual device, but for the operator, of course, the concern about the network, or basically the carbon and energy outcomes as a whole. Next one, please. Next slide. So then beyond the metrics themselves, there are other aspects of consideration that are being addressed here. Basically, this is divided into these subsections. So user perspective, this concerns basically which metrics make sense to expose to users, and so forth, that can perhaps help direct or guide basically greener outcomes, basically in terms of how communication services are being used. Then basically there is the holistic perspective that basically looks not just at the energy consumption, but also takes into consideration basically how do you account for energy sources. Clearly, basically, if you have something that's powered by a diesel generator, that is perhaps less less sustainable than if you have something powered by sustainable source and so on. Also, how do you account for other things, or how metrics can basically attribute things such as for HVAC, for hidden devices that may not be instrumented, which play a large role in the overall equation as well, how those could be considered. Then there's a issue concerning the equipment life cycle and the embodied carbon sustainability of that. How can this be factored into then basically the issue of certification? How do we know basically that, for instance, basically the values, the metrics that are being reported are true? Can they be trusted? How do you deal with imprecision and uncertainty? Actually, turns out in many cases, actually, it may be advantageous, or actually, it's not easy to give one particular value. Many things can be better specified in terms of ranges. So how do we account for that? Clearly, basically, our existing data models are not very well equipped, perhaps, to express these directly, but it's an important consideration for applications. Then, basically, as also mentioned earlier, there are green metrics defined elsewhere. So IETF is not the only and not the first place to do this. So basically, we have a section on that, most notably ETSI, also as Ali was, I think, alluding to earlier. And then finally, basically, there are also controversies around some of those metrics and their abuse and so forth. So basically, there's a section to discuss those things. Next one. So yeah, basically, as mentioned, basically this internet draft has been actually around for a while. It has been incorporating feedback and input for roughly 2 years, and so hence basically the question is basically is green working group the landing spot? Ultimately, our goal would be to get this adopted by the working group, and yeah, that concludes my presentation. Questions?
You're here.
So, Genchen from Huawei, could you please give a brief clarification on the difference between this definition of flow and path, and why do you think this flow metric is so important? Thank you.
Oh, well, the flow concerns basically about the actual energy, for instance, consumed by a particular service instance or by a particular flow instance. So think, for instance, the flow record, right? You keep track of all kinds of statistics there, and it's and so basically the energy consumed that can be attributed, or the share of that of carbon basically that can be attributed to the flow is something that would go into that. So basically also the volume of traffic, the duration of the flow, those things factor into that. And that's different from the path. The path is basically the use case there is path is supposed to help you make better decisions about which paths to choose, which routes to select in order to achieve a greener outcome. So this will basically tell you not how much energy has been consumed by an instance, but basically for instance, which path is more energy effective, perhaps runs across greener equipment or what have you.
Okay, so thank you for that. We're sort of running a bit over time, so at this stage, I think we'll move on to the next section where we're discussing models, and then effectively, hopefully, there'll be some time at the end to come back and just sort of discuss next steps for the wider work. Thank you.
Thanks.
Good day, I'm Tony Lee. Ron Bonica couldn't be here. We're presenting a Yang model for doing power management. If you've been at Ivy or NetConf, this is exactly the same presentation that we've presented at previous IETFs. Go back to your email. I'll be talking very quickly, try to keep up on time. Please keep up. Okay, we've got several goals in this draft. We are trying to do device management. We're trying to report on power consumption on a per component basis. This is because we can actually achieve power savings by turning off various components inside of routers. We can turn off interfaces, we can turn off NPUs, we can turn off line cards, we can turn off portions of switch fabrics, we can turn off MACsec implementations, all sorts of things. All of this goes directly to power savings. The whole point of this is to truly enable a PCE to do global power consumption optimization. And the reason for doing this is that we can consolidate traffic. Some ISPs report that their traffic levels drop to 15% of peak at night. That means 85% of their power is being wasted. We can recover some or most of that. Okay? Now to do that, we need several things. We need to allow the management plane to put components into power save mode and obviously bring them right back. We need to understand the functional dependencies between components in a router. Which line cards depend on which switch cards. Okay, currently that's not exposed anywhere. We're asking that we expose that. We need to let the management plane tell the switch fabrics what the expected traffic is. If we know that we're going to only be running a 10% traffic load, and we can tell the switch fabrics that, they can automatically adjust. But they can't do that without some understanding of what they should expect in terms of traffic. Okay, here's the base level tools for doing that. Report on used power. This is a leaf in the Yang model, a unit 32 that reports watts used, plain and simple. If you don't have a power meter for your component, please report your datasheet value. Some information is better than no information. A Boolean to tell us whether you can actually go into power save mode. And rewrite, excuse me, this is the rewrite to actually turn it off, put your component off. This is the one to tell us whether you can be put into power save. A Boolean to tell us whether automatic power management is enabled for the component or not. Many switch fabrics have automatic power management, but some managers would like to be able to disable it, especially if we believe it's not behaving. We need functional dependencies, and this allows a component to tell us about its dependence and its required components. Right? Bidirectional. Here's something of the tree representation. We want to be able to do traffic planning. Again, we'd like to be able to tell the switch fabric, hi, we're only expecting 10% in traffic for the next 15 minutes. You can turn off a lot of your resources. And so tell us how much traffic you're expecting in terms of bits per second, both input and output on a per interface basis. Okay, that's all on the slides I've got. This is a relatively simple model. Yes, there are infinite numbers of things that could make it more complex. We are trying to crawl before we run. At this point, we are very much looking for collaborators. In specific, we'd love to have somebody who's a real Yang doctor. Neither of us are Yang doctors at all. And we also would like working group adoption. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Hello, I'm Benoit. So thanks, Tony. So on your slide about relationship, that's actually a good one where you mentioned the dependencies, right? So I heard also from one of the presentation, we mentioned PoE, right? So that's why we need to have other type of relationships, like this port power controls something else. And that's why I believe that we should actually focus on use cases, because it's not clear to me if something like PoE is in or not, right? And that's why I believe that we should have spent more time on the use cases to define if PoE, something like this, is in or not. But you're going in the right direction with the relationships.
I completely agree that PoE should be in. We're after in total power in the network wide. Ignoring PoE would be silly. These elements right here would get you to the interface relationship, and then you would have to look at the topology model to understand which AP is on which interface.
Exactly. But it's not clear from the use cases if POE is in or not. So we're getting from the solution that POE should be a use case. So there is something wrong in how we're doing things, but I agree with your conclusions.
Hi, Rashmit from Huawei, Canada. Tony, are we expecting to get some requirement in terms of bootstrap time for different components that you mentioned that you can bring up and bring down at different time of the day? Are we expecting to get some requirements in terms of how fast or how slow we should actually bootstrap?
Can you go a bit closer to the mic, please?
Yeah, bootstrap times for the component that you mentioned, interfaces, different components within the routers and switches and so on and so forth.
As I mentioned, again, we're trying to keep it very simple right now. Yes, that's certainly a leaf that could be added.
Hi, Eve Schuler. And earlier on, you talked about a metric that was just doing the very basic, which was measuring the power usage. But then you said that if you can't actually measure the power usage, that you can insert something from the data sheet. So I wanted to understand if you're also in your Yang model allowing those who are collecting that information to see whether it was actually measured versus reported from the sheet.
Right now, we're not making that distinction. Again, we're just trying to get things going very simply. And so we will take whatever data we can get. If the working group feels we need additional enhancement and complexity here, we can add it.
Yeah, that attribute would be certainly interesting to me. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Going, gone. Thank you.
So I just have some comments. So I think we're too early to do adoption polls now, but I think in terms of this work, I think it's useful. I like the fact that the model is very simple. I think that's a good starting point. And to address Benoit's point, I think it's good to do the use cases, but I don't want the working group have to spend ages on requirements and then terminology and then start doing the models. I think we need to sort of parallelize that somewhat. You can come to the mic if you want to comment here. So I'd like to see that work happening in parallel and we refine it as we go.
I get this. So it might seem obvious from the charter that we know what we're doing. However, a simple use case like do we do POE, yes or not, will have a lot of consequences on how we're going to model this and what is required in terms of who controls what, who sees the power of who. And all of these are actually architectural things that we thought of in EMAN. And this is why we have in the use cases, we kept all the EMAN requirements. We're hoping to simplify all of this. But what we're slowly concluding is that we arrived at the same architecture of EMAN, which is good or bad, right? But this is why the relationship there has a lot of implication from an architecture point of view.
Okay.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Qingwu, and the topic I'm going to share today is energy saving young data model. So, similar actually, this is not a new draft that we already present in the IV transfer to this, working group. And so just a, kind of reminder actually, why we have this draft, according the current charter, the one important priority work is to develop a young data model, not only for the monitoring, but also for energy efficiency control and optimization. And this model actually, you will use this the data, try to monitor or connect the data not only at the component level, device level, but also at the network level. So this job really, target to this charter item. A little bit of background and recap actually. This probably we already discussed in the previous bulb actually. So, the energy consumption monitoring is not new actually. Has already been, already been used in the IoT scenario or campus network scenario, but bigger, challenge is, the energy consumption cost and the environment impact as Dean mentioned actually. So operator, right, try to, looking for the better solution to assess and control this energy consumption. So we also see, technology trend, not only in the IETF, but also in 3GPP, ETSI, and ITIS, and yeah, you name it, actually. They actually all, looking to, moving from energy consumption monitoring to the energy efficiency paradigm. Actually, this is something we observed, actually. And so the goal of this draft really, want to develop the young data model, at the network level, not only you can, capture and monitor all the energy consumption data, but also energy efficiency metric, this kind of new data, so we can leverage this, all the data, and to really to do some control and optimization. So the focus use case and requirements, actually, we more target to the network device that consume more energy, or network component within the device consume most energy. Actually, it could be, in the data center. Actually, for example, we have power supply unit actually combined with network element. They consume most energy, so we can target this kind of network device. Also, in mobile network or fixed network, actually, we see, a network device will consume most energy. So this is something we look at. So we can, measure not only how much energy has been consumed per device or per network, but also we want to, look into some, new scenario like energy efficiency related use cases. So we can measure this energy efficiency per device and per network. And also this PUE already get presented for many times. Actually, this also kind of use cases. So we break down the use cases into, 4 category. We can, we can discover, what capability can be supported by the network device. We call the inventory discovery. We also can, do the power consumption monitoring, power efficiency monitoring, and more advanced feature is energy efficiency optimization and control. So this is something we look at. Yeah. So for our, high-level model design, you will see actually we try to break it down into 2 portions. Actually, one is focused on, dynamic metric, connection and monitoring. The second is capability discovery. Actually, for dynamic metric monitoring, we refer to like energy efficiency metric, and also you can connect, the energy consumption data. Actually, this will, we try to, to correlate this kind of, all the dynamic metric data with network topology, so you know, where, this can be consumed and in which interface, in which network device. So we, extend from this network topology based model. And in addition, we have, more static, capability discovery or monitoring part. Actually, so we actually try to, derive from the, base network inventory model in IV actually to cover these static capability parameters, so you can know, what the capability can be supported by, current the network device, especially this kind of, modernized network device. And so where we position these young data models, as I mentioned, is a network level model. So we use this, network model, on top of, energy efficiency management system. So we actually break it down into 3 young data model. Actually, the first is energy saving common. Actually, really capture the common data type. Can be used not only for the energy, not only can be used energy efficiency, dynamic metric monitoring, but also can be used in inventory capability discovery. And the second is network energy saving, more focused on monitor the dynamic metric. The third young data model is is a net NI energy saving. Actually, is try to focus on the capability discovery. So you can see we can provide not only component level view, but also device level view and network level view. And in addition, we can leverage all this data. We can to manage manipulate the device in the network to do the optimization and control. So this is a high level solution overview. And actually, we already established that GitHub to keep track of all the open issue. We have 2 open issue we haven't concluded, but we're happy to get your input. The first is about power distribution unit use cases, actually, these, we actually have code definition from the, the RFC 7603. Actually, these, PDU usually have, built-in metric meters actually to, to measure the power, consumption, for many device connectivity actually. So the question actually is, how we can model this kind of PDU and how we can model the connection between the PDU and the network device. And one of the option proposed actually from, our, author team actually from Telefonica and Oscar actually, he suggests we can model PDU as, a device, and we can model connection between PDU and network device as a link in the network topology. So this is one option. I also hear some other option, maybe, you model as a component, but I think this, want to hear people feedback on this, which option will be best choice actually, so we can, to see whether this can be better model. And in addition, actually, we have this one. Actually, second open issue is about, distributed control and energy saving optimization. Actually, these can be broken down into the local management and the network-wide management. So I can make a, analogy, in the, home network where you have air conditioner usually. So you may support local management and network management. So you can use the network-wide management to turn on the energy saving mode, and then you can, make this air conditioner to adjust the temperature based on, network status changes. So, so you can see this local management will be used, mostly actually, and network-wide management only used at the beginning of the session. So actually, so this something we actually want to, better model this in this network level young data model. And for example, this local management more refer to this kind of, dynamic energy saving within the network device. We give several examples. For example, you can adjust the number of the SerDes bus or network processor, based on the traffic load, and also in some, virtual network scenario, maybe you can, allow the, the resource to be located or released, based on the number of the component change actually. So this, some other example we gave actually. So we want to better model this in the, network level young data model, but currently actually still the open issue. If you have any comments or input, actually feel free actually to contribute. And so for the next step, we think, we have another terminology draft. I think this is really, foundation, make people, on the same page, using the same language, talk with each other. So this is very important. So we think we'll continue to align with the terminology, and in addition, we have a data tracker, as I mentioned, we will, connect all the open issue, and so welcome your input. So that's all from my side. Thank you. Comments?
There? Yeah. They're coming.
Could you go a few slides back, please? I will just, one more. Okay, so this one, this is a good. So who is the customer in your case here?
Could be the, network operator. He actually, he built this energy efficient management system, and
could be the network operator, or it could be the network user. That's a big difference. Because the network operator sees the whole domain, sees all the network as a whole domain, and can make the right energy decisions based on, in this case, you really have to do it based on the whole entity, because you might happen to break some of the energy contracts that the other users might not be aware of, and it can lead to huge amounts of cost that they don't have any control over that. So that's one part that you have to be very specific in that case, who is controlling the energy usage within the network. And the other part is, I think this is trying to do too much to start with, because there's like the, I would be happier to see a basic approach than trying to do the whole thing, because I have a sense that you're going from a top-down perspective from the whole network and then going all the way down, instead of trying to do simple things. We have a big issue within the IETF. We don't have energy people who understand energy distribution and everything internally. And if we try to learn the basics, the primitives, it will be easier for us to build more complex systems going up. And I have a feeling you're going from top down. And this reconsidering the approach, because you have some valuable pieces in there, and taking the approach from the bottom up would be more useful at this point, I believe.
Yeah, I think we, more targeted, network operator, they are bigger beneficiaries. Actually, I thought you maybe, talking about maybe power grid, these kind of use cases. So we think a network operator, yeah, they have control, try to improve network traffic utilization, but also they want to make a good use of energy consumption, so they can buy the electricity actually, so they have a more control. So I agree with you. Actually, this can be more breakdown. Maybe single domain, multi-domain. Actually, maybe other. I think. Yeah.
No, you need to have the key.
Okay. There's a multi-domain.
Yeah, we didn't want to expand that actually. So this is just the generic, framework we actually bring here actually. So.
Okay, we need to move on. Move on. Okay, thank you.
I assume this is connected. So.
Yeah. That's me. I am Rui Zhexun. This is account of another group member. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and it is great pleasure to attend this meeting. I'm Rui Zhexun from China Unicom. Next slide, please. Yes. Today I'm going to give you a brief presentation about the draft young data model for host power monitoring on behalf of other authors, Changliu and Yueguo. Now I'm telling you why I'm motivated to write this draft. In the project of China Unicom, I'm currently responsible for doing some research about cost and the effectiveness of computing infrastructure containing both construction and operation. I wanted to contribute some of my work to IETF too. So operations and management area is my job, and I noticed that what I want to do is just in line with working group Green's vision, and that's why I'm here. We chose energy consumption as our topic and found that existing RVCs barely consider hosts. So this draft focuses on the hierarchical model among SDN controller, management platform, router, switch, and host. Next slide, please. And this is the introduction part. The first paragraph is the background, emphasizing the importance of energy consumption of IT equipment. The second paragraph gives an overall abstract of the draft. I will explain this hierarchical Young model in the next slide. Next, please. And here's the model structure. In order to show more intuitively, I have added some annotations on the basis of original representation graph. Layer 1 is SDN controller management platform. Layer 2 is router switch. Layer 3 is host. For relationship 1 between layer 2 and layer 3, layer 2 acts as netconf client, and layer 3 acts as netconf server. Layer 3 collects its energy consumption and responds to requests of layer 2 through the netconf agent to provide configuration and status data. Similar to relationship 1, relationship 2 is the client-server relationship between layer 1 and layer 2. In this way, layer 1 can indirectly obtain the specific energy consumption data of layer 3 through layer 2. Next, please. This is the original text of the basic elements and layers, and just explain the same thing as I demonstrated. Next, please. And this relation is just is also I have explained. Next. Yes, and this is the original one, original hierarchical representation. Next, please. And here is the tree diagram and model. The main idea is the information is sent hierarchically from layer 3 to layer 2 to layer 1. In the tree diagram, power statistics refers to the layer 1. You can see the first line. And network device statistics refer to layer 2, and host statistics refer to layer 3. The statistics of layers contain each other like an onion, using name as unique ID. In the Young model, list is used to show the layer, and leaf is used to show the detailed information like name and the power consumption. Name is the key to link the name and power consumption of the same layer. And all lower layer matches the upper layer in the way it should match, also using name as the key. Next slide, please. And that's the main content of our draft. And here's our contact information. Please feel free to give me some comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Okay, we have 3 people in the queue.
Okay.
Not sorry about the Jianxia Tang because it's, I think it comes from the previous presentation. So then I guess that's you.
I would like to get a better explanation of what the layer is, because that's one part that I'm confused in this presentation. And the other part is, how is this Yang model different from what we saw from the Tony Lee's presentation, from his proposal? The collecting the data, it's a model that is proposed. This is the model versus that model, but this one is put in a narrow context versus a wider context. So if you could explain it, I would appreciate it.
Yes, it's a good question. I think my model is more concerned about the measuring of the energy usage using the hierarchical concept. And the Tony Lee's is more focused on the control and control the energy usage. And yes, you say it's more basic. And I think in the flow of the power consumption, we are measuring is in the front, and then it's a control part. So I think our draft is also necessary.
My question is not necessarily directed to this particular draft or this particular metrics. My question is in general to the working group is, I think there's some amount of confusion in what are we collecting. There's a question of, are we collecting host power consumption? Are we collecting facility power consumption? We probably might need to define, and I welcome opinion in this group, to figure out what is the focus of power collection metrics in green.
I feel like you're teeing up Benoit to come back up and talk about requirements again and use cases, but so we'll go back there. But yes, I think as part of this work, we obviously need to sort of refine and work out exactly what these different models and how they fit together. So
But we have this component, device, and network, and that's
Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding coming into the meeting, but we seem to be broadening that.
I guess that the point probably is when you talk about network, when you're talking about the network, is you're talking about the network of the facility, the network at large. Is something that for us, when we were preparing the charter, probably was very clear, but then we, things pop up during the, and it looks like it's the case.
Okay. Keep it short, Dan.
Very short. Several tier 1 operators have facilities that use more energy than the network equipment inside. And that is not an unusual case.
You're the AD, you do whatever you like.
Now, I don't want to certainly impinge on the time of what you have left, but I guess that would be a good discussion to have is when we talk about green in the context of networking, what equipment are we including? Are we not talking about HVAC, power consumption also?
Let's move
on. Well, let's move on. I think that qualifying this is something that is important for sure, but let me pass. Is Petra, is it Alberto? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, this will be hopefully a quick presentation. This is a small draft we have put together that I hope aligns or complements some of the work that has been discussed here today. This is Path Energy Traffic Radio API. I'm presenting on behalf of my co-authors. And we have presented this in the past, well, Luis has presented this in the past in Panergy, and we are presenting here on Green today. So the motivation behind this work is trying to get some visibility on the energy consumed as the traffic goes through a path. That is probably a very hard problem to solve, so we're focusing on the API for that. We are just trying to think how such an API may look like. We're not solving the hard problem of how to actually get the data. We have defined a young model. Previously, we had a REST API for this because we're thinking more from kind of a controller point of view, like high abstraction controller. And then we moved to Jan to align better with the rest of the work. And big kudos to Jan that did a lot of the heavy lifting on the Jan model. And some of the original ideas that motivated this case were that this could be consumed both externally but also internally. So one use case that we have been looking at heavily is kind of an SD-WAN type of use case where you have an overlay deployed over a network underlay, and then you are trying to get some info from the underlay. But at the same time, you can use an API such this one to do your own internal optimization, for instance, when you are running the network. So we believe that there is a lot of potential for such this API. Yeah, some rationale that we discussed early on, and probably the draft may be broader than just this, but this is certainly some interesting thoughts. That we understand that the energy consumption on the path right comes from the devices that are there, but also the traffic that is going through those devices. And while we hope we can affect the traffic itself, hopefully, maybe in the future we are also able to affect the baseline component as well, so that there is a lot of room for things to improve over time. And again, as I said, what we're aiming is to have an API that allows us to collect this data from a path perspective over time. We are not making any assumption of where this may go. We're trying just to see if an API makes sense. This is the only slide really that you should look at. This is where we are trying to describe what we're after. You see there a network with multiple potential paths, and how hopefully at some point we will be able to retrieve information about the different paths, and then we expose it for higher up layers to consume, and you see the Petra API there in between. We are trying to describe how the API query response may look like. Nothing is written in stone, and I understand that people may have opinions on all this. So again, this is just trying to kickstart some work. A lot of work to do here still. But yeah, some of the things that we define on the YAM model today is like, okay, given this source IP and the destination IP and this throughput, what is going to be the energy consumed and whatnot. And again, all subject to evolve and all subject to discussion. Yeah, as I mentioned, we have presented this in Pan-RG in the past, and this is the first time we moved to green, of course. So the difference from the last version is that we have added an appendix describing a bit the use cases that we are considering now. As I mentioned, like SD-WAN is one of them, or SD-WAN-like things, and then this multi-layer approach to network and how you can look at that holistically. We hope to align this with other use cases, and Luis mentioned a few use cases that may come on the use case draft. So as this evolves, we hope to make sure that the API is a language, the use cases that may come. And yeah, in terms of next steps, of course, collect feedback and comments, questions, and whatnot here. And then extend the API. Well, we say parameters there, but in really, extend the API to make sure that it makes sense, and see if we can play a bit with a small prototype that we have been putting together. And I think that's it. We can probably go to questions.
Hi, Dan Bogdanovic. I'm fully supporting on providing APIs that could be used for traffic engineering. That is very useful work, but please keep it simple. And please, 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 don't talk about carbon optimization. We have no way to know what is the carbon intensity of the power, what we are using at the moment. They are changing the sources of power depending on so many electric power characteristics that the craziest part of all, they don't do it in any digital way. They have literally phone lines, and they're talking over phones, and they're saying, oh, I will turn up this coal power plant despite they have all this available solar energy because of how the network is being used throughout the whole region. Right. We have to turn on the coal power plant.
Right.
And whatever it's telling you, you're using that much of green energy, this is just as the overall picture, but you will not be able to use it on such precise calculation that you're looking for.
Wishful certificates, yes. That's
Shreyari Sangli, Juniper. I understand the device has power basics, power baseline characteristics, things like that. But when you talk about paths do change dynamically. I don't understand, is it even feasible to compute the power consumption for a path and then keep it up to date?
Excellent question. We hope so, but that's why we're here. We're trying to see where this may go and how feasible this is. We hope that at some point we would be able to get at least something that is useful. but right now it's an open problem, yeah.
Okay, I think we're done. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I don't, well, no.
Yeah, go for it.
No, go for it, yes.
So we've only got a couple of minutes, so can you keep this presentation short, probably down to say 2 minutes, please, and then we've got a few minutes to wrap up.
Sure. Do you control this or do I?
Yeah, we are showing your slides, so just let me go for it, Jan.
Okay, next. So I think that there's some core principles that we need to agree on in this working group when it comes to how we collect and aggregate data. And this philatelist thing is one of the building blocks for doing that, I think. And where we are trying to define things like what is a provider, what's a collector, aggregator, processor, and roles like that. And you have this PowerF draft that is being discussed in the working group, in the green working group, that is building on these concepts that are defined in here. So I'm trying to make the case that this philatelist should go into the green working group. It's deliberately doesn't have a name, a working group name in the title because we didn't know at the time where it should go, but it will fit nicely here in green. I think you can move on to the next. So here's a very quick view of this. There's a definition of what aggregators, collectors, and providers are. Next. And how the relation is between a philatelist and a PowerF draft. Next. How the relation is between philatelist and the time series database, mapping from Yang to time series databases draft. Next. And what I think we need to agree on what should be measured and how to measure that, so that we have a common agreement on how this is done. And we need also, the same way, we need to agree on how to aggregate things, because you're getting lots of data and you need to sum up things, and there are many ways to do that, and we need to agree on one particular way. And also, I think in order to make our work here in the whole green working group relevant for the rest of the world and be picked up by all, we need to talk to the SBTI and greenhouse gas protocol folks.
Okay.
I think that's it in 1 minute.
That's maybe, yes, spot on. Thank you, Jan.
And so just, I don't think there's anyone in the queue, so just a quick comment from me. I think that this is interesting work, and particularly the PowerF drafts, I think are very much potentially in scope for this working group. But the philatelist one is more on the border, I'm not sure this is the right place. So I think we need to chat with you and find out. I understand it's a dependency, and find the best sort of place as to how that work can progress.
Yes, there's dependency, and I'm doubtful that it will progress in a timely manner anywhere else.
Okay, thank you. So for the last couple of minutes, what I want to do is just ask the room. So we're hoping to maybe host some virtual interims on some of the topics discussed today. And so I want to ask a quick show of hands, as to whether people will be willing to participate in those virtual interims on green topics. I haven't specified what those are. I think we can work those up on the list and have discussions between Diego and Mahesh and things, but I want to find out who's interested and who would participate in virtual interims to try and sort of refine some of these things, spend a bit more time on particular areas to try and get forward. Okay, so I mean, I can wait that's going up. So again, it looks like there's good interest for doing virtual interim. So we'll take that forward and we'll try and sort of get some organized and things. Obviously, time zones are going to be interesting with this. But basically, I think we've had some really good discussion today. I do take on the comments from Benoit and things of making sure we cover the requirements and get enough time to discuss those, and not the requirements so much of the use cases. So that sort of well in scope. I do think I encourage people to discuss these unless these drafts and focus on seeing how we can get towards consensus and driving towards solutions that the working group can adopt and move forward with. Any other comments? We're done.
Nothing.
So
done.
I think we're done for today. Thank you. Oh no, Dan. Thank you for coming.
And for the applause. That's something very much appreciated.